Not that long ago, North America was home to some of the largest land mammals that have ever existed anywhere on Earth. We're counting down the 11 biggest. Number 11, the Alaskan moose. Starting things off is the Alaskan moose, the largest subspecies of the largest living deer on Earth. Bulls can weigh up to 820 kilograms, or around 1,810 pounds, standing nearly 8 feet tall at the shoulder, with antlers that can spread more than 6 feet across. What's surprising here is that this living animal actually outweighs several extinct giants people assume must have been bigger, including the prehistoric stag moose and even the legendary Irish elk, an animal famous specifically for its enormous antlers. Despite that size, moose are almost entirely solitary and herbivorous, spending huge amounts of time wading through lakes and wetlands to feed on aquatic plants. And their only real predators in North America today are wolves and bears, usually only successful when targeting calves or already weakened individuals. It's a good reminder right out of the gate that size in the animal kingdom doesn't always match reputation. Number 10, the polar bear. Next up, another animal you can still see today, and one that holds the title of the largest land carnivore currently alive on the planet. Polar bears typically weigh somewhere in the 450 to 500 kilogram range for an average adult male, but the largest one ever verified in the wild tipped the scales at 1,002 kilograms, or 2,209 pounds. That record-setting bear alone is heavy enough to rival several extinct predators later on this list. Polar bears technically spend huge amounts of time on sea ice hunting seals, using a combination of patience and an incredible sense of smell that can detect a seal's breathing hole from nearly a kilometer away. But they're still very much a land-based mammal, and easily the biggest predator walking or swimming around North America right now. Their massive size is largely an adaptation to conserving heat and storing enough fat reserves to survive long stretches without a successful hunt, something that becomes more difficult every year as Arctic sea ice continues shrinking.
Number 9, the American bison. Coming in at number 9 is an animal practically synonymous with North America itself, the American bison. Wild bulls typically weigh up to around 900 kilograms, or roughly 2,000 pounds, with some especially large individuals pushing even higher than that. Bison are the largest land mammal currently living in North America, and they're also a living link to something much bigger, because as we'll see later on this list, today's bison are actually the smaller descendants of a massive prehistoric ancestor. It's also worth remembering just how close this animal came to disappearing entirely. Tens of millions of bison once roamed the plains, but massive commercial hunting through the 1800s pushed the population down to only a few hundred individuals by the 1880s. Conservation efforts starting in the early 1900s slowly brought them back from the brink, and today the American bison stands as one of the more genuine wildlife recovery success stories on this entire list. Number 8, the American camel. Here's one that throws people off almost every time. At number 8 is Camelops, an extinct North American camel that weighed in at around 1,000 kilograms, or 2,200 pounds. Most people assume camels are a Middle Eastern or Asian animal through and through, but camels actually originated in North America somewhere around 40 to 45 million years ago, evolving here for tens of millions of years before eventually spreading to Asia and Africa over ancient land bridges, and to South America as well. Then, in one of paleontology's stranger ironies, camels went completely extinct on the very continent where they first evolved. Camelops was one of the last camel species still living in North America before that happened, standing taller and rangier than the camels we picture today, with legs around 20% longer than a modern dromedary's, and it likely roamed dry grasslands and scrublands in herds, grazing on tough desert vegetation. Camelops finally went extinct around the same time as most of North America's other Ice Age giants, and its closest living relatives today aren't found anywhere near North America at all, but rather in the form of llamas and alpacas down in South America, and true camels scattered across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, all of them ultimately tracing their family tree back to this continent. Number 7, the short-faced bear. At number 7, we've got one of the most intimidating predators on this entire list, the short-faced bear, or Arctodus simus. The largest known specimens are estimated to have weighed up to 1,000 kilograms, essentially tying it with the camel we just covered, and standing on its hind legs, it could reach well over 10 feet tall. This bear had unusually long legs for a bear, which sparked decades of debate over whether it was built to run down prey at high speed or whether that build served some other purpose entirely, like simply covering huge territories to find food. To this day, scientists are still split on whether it was mostly an active predator or mostly a scavenger, and some researchers now argue its overall skeleton looked more like a typical omnivorous bear than the specialized hunter it was once portrayed as, making it one of the more unresolved mysteries in Ice Age paleontology. One of the largest and most complete skeletons ever recovered came out of Indiana, and today the original sits in Chicago's Field Museum, with cast replicas on display at several other museums across North America, giving visitors a rare chance to stand next to a predator that could look a grown adult in the eye on all fours.
Number 6. Bison antiquus. Number 6 belongs to Bison antiquus, and this is where things get interesting for anyone who thought bison were already covered. This is the direct ancestor of the modern American bison sitting at number 9, and it was dramatically bigger, weighing up to 1,588 kilograms, or about 3,501 pounds, with horns spanning up to a meter across. That means the bison you'd see in Yellowstone today is actually a noticeably shrunken-down version of what used to roam these same plains. Bison antiquus was one of the primary large prey animals hunted by early humans arriving in North America, and evidence of that hunting shows up repeatedly at archaeological kill sites across the continent, most famously at the Folsom site in New Mexico, where a stone spear point was discovered lodged directly between the ribs of a bison antiquus skeleton, one of the pieces of evidence that first proved humans were hunting large Ice Age game in North America thousands of years earlier than scientists had previously believed. That single discovery, made back in 1927, ended up completely reshaping how archaeologists understood the timeline of human presence on the continent, all thanks to one very large, very unlucky bison. Number 5. The giant longhorned bison. At number 5, we're going even bigger with bison latifrons, commonly called the giant bison or longhorned bison, and quite possibly the largest wild cattle relative to ever exist. Weight estimates run as high as 2,000 kilograms, or 4,400 pounds, but the real showstopper here is the horns, which measured up to 7 feet across from tip to tip, more than double the horn span of a modern bison. Those horns likely weren't just for show either. Living alongside massive predators like the short-faced bear we just covered, a rack of horns that size would have made a serious statement to anything thinking about testing it, and probably also played a major role in head-to-head combat between males competing for mates, similar to how modern bison and cattle still use their horns today, just on a dramatically larger scale. Despite its size and those imposing horns, bison latifrons appears to have died out earlier than many of the other animals on this list, with most populations vanishing somewhere around 20,000 to 30,000 years ago, well before the broader end of Ice Age extinction event that claimed most of the rest of this list, possibly giving way to its smaller, more adaptable descendant, Bison antiquus, as the dominant bison species across the plains. Number 4. The American Mastodon. Number 4 brings us into truly elephant-sized territory with the American Mastodon, which could weigh up to 6 tons. Despite constantly getting mixed up with mammoths, mastodons were a completely different animal, more distantly related to modern elephants, with straighter tusks, bumpier teeth built for crunching branches and pine cones rather than grazing on grass, and a preference for wooded, swampy terrain instead of open plains. Mastodons also tended to live more solitary lives, unlike the tight-knit herds mammoths are famous for, making them the odd ones out among North America's Ice Age giants, despite looking so similar at a glance. Mastodons also hold a special place in American scientific history, since one of the earliest complete skeletons ever mounted for public display was a mastodon, excavated in New York in the early 1800s and exhibited by the naturalist Charles Wilson Peale, helping kick off widespread public fascination with prehistoric animals in the United States, decades before dinosaurs entered the picture. Mastodons also managed to survive on the continent for an incredibly long time, with some estimates suggesting the species existed in North America for nearly 5 million years before finally going extinct around 10,000 years ago, meaning they coexisted with early humans for a meaningful stretch of time before disappearing for good.
Number 3. The giant ground sloth. At number 3 is an animal that looks like it shouldn't even be real, Eremotherium, the giant ground sloth. Older estimates put this animal at a staggering 6.5 tons, roughly the size of a full-grown African elephant, though more recent studies have revised that figure down to somewhere closer to 4.5 tons. Either way, this was an enormous, slow-moving herbivore capable of rearing up on its hind legs to strip entire trees of leaves, using claws long enough to double as genuine defensive weapons. Fossil trackways discovered in Florida even preserve the footprints of adult sloths walking alongside much smaller juveniles, giving researchers a rare, direct glimpse of these animals moving and interacting as family groups, rather than just isolated bones. Like most North American ground sloths, Aramotherium's ancestors actually originated down in South America, migrating north once a land bridge connected the two continents a few million years ago, eventually spreading as far as Florida, Texas, and even into the southern United States more broadly. It's wild to think something built like a sloth ever reached a size like this, but for a solid chunk of the Ice Age, it absolutely did. Number 2. The woolly mammoth. Coming in at number 2, and probably the animal most people picture the second they hear Ice Age, the woolly mammoth. Adult males could weigh up to 8 tons and stood roughly 12 feet tall at the shoulder, covered in thick, shaggy fur and insulated by a heavy layer of fat built specifically to survive brutal cold. Woolly mammoths are also some of the best preserved Ice Age animals we have, thanks to these specimens occasionally turning up frozen and remarkably intact in Siberian and North American permafrost, giving scientists an almost unheard of window into what these animals actually looked like in life, not just what their bones suggest. And while most woolly mammoths died out around 10,000 years ago alongside the rest of North America's Ice Age giants, a small, isolated population actually survived on Russia's Wrangel Island until just 4,000 years ago, meaning mammoths were still alive on Earth while the Great Pyramid of Giza was already standing.
Number 1. The Columbian Mammoth. The single largest land mammal to ever call North America home, the Columbian mammoth. This animal could weigh up to a staggering 13 tons, taller and heavier than a woolly mammoth, heavier than any living elephant on Earth today, and armed with curved tusks that could stretch up to 14 feet long. Columbian mammoths ranged from what's now the northern United States all the way down into Central America, grazing across a huge variety of landscapes and consuming hundreds of pounds of vegetation a day just to sustain a body that size. One of the richest single sites for studying them is the Waco Mammoth National Monument in Texas, where the remains of an entire herd, including several adults that appear to have died together, possibly in a flash flood, have been preserved essentially where they fell, giving paleontologists an unusually complete look at how an entire mammoth herd actually lived and moved together. When people picture the biggest land animal to ever exist in North America, this is it. A creature so large it's hard to fully picture standing next to anything alive on this continent today. 11 animals, 1 continent, and a size range running from an 1,800-pound moose all the way up to a 13-ton mammoth. Most of these disappeared within a fairly narrow window at the end of the last Ice Age, somewhere between about 10,000 and 13,000 years ago, likely from some combination of rapid climate change and human hunting pressure. Either way, what's left roaming North America today is really just a fraction of how big this continent's wildlife used to be. If you enjoyed this one, let me know in the comments which animal on this list surprised you the most, and subscribe for more.